For years, J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings has been considered the #1 fantasy series, but now Game of Thrones. Let's take a look at how George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones is actually better than Lord of the Rings. Let's start with prominent female characters. The Lord of the Rings has plenty of characters, but almost none of the important ones are female. Game of Thrones, on the other hand, has many female characters who are not only well realized, but play major roles in the story. That's truer to life, and it gives a dimension other fantasy narratives often lack. Next, how about the bigger sweep? No one could call the Lord of the Rings lightweight, but the sheer sweep of Game of Thrones gives fantasy fans a ton to dig into. It has more characters, more places, more plot lines than Lord of the Rings. Bigger isn't always better, but in fantasy fiction, it's nice to have. Game of Thrones is also more grounded and realistic. Sure, there are dragons and zombies, but at bottom, it's about people struggling to gain and keep power. It's more grounded in reality than Lord of the Rings, where elves and other fantasy creatures take on bigger roles. It's also less predictable. When reading Lord of the Rings, you pretty much know from the beginning that the plucky heroes are going to win out over the evil Dark Lord in the end. It's harder to see what's coming on Game of Thrones. There, the heroes can die, and just because a character is important doesn't mean he's invincible. At the end of the day, to each his own. You may be a bigger Game of Thrones fan or Lord of the Rings. Either way, they're both phenomenal, but Game of Thrones certainly has an argument to being better. For more coverage, you can go to winteriscoming.net.